INFJs are often blind to their strengths, not because they lack confidence or ability, but because their inner world and psychological makeup are not oriented towards self-recognition in the conventional sense. As introverted intuitives with a strong feeling trait, they naturally focus their attention outward, on other people, on hidden meanings, and on future possibilities. Their dominant function, introverted intuition, processes information in a deep, abstract, and often subconscious way. Because of this, INFJs may find it difficult to trace their insights back to concrete actions or logic, leading them to underestimate the originality and power of their own thinking. This internal complexity is often compounded by their auxiliary function, extrovert feeling, which prioritizes harmony, empathy, and the emotional needs of others. INFJs frequently downplay their own gifts because they measure their worth by the emotional well-being of the people around them. Their success is not viewed in terms of personal accomplishment, but rather in terms of how effectively they've supported, inspired, or healed others. When the attention is so consistently placed outward, it's easy to overlook or dismiss the internal strengths that make such impact possible. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. Get your copy now. INFJs tend to be perfectionistic and idealistic. They hold themselves to incredibly high standards, often comparing their progress not to that of their peers, but to an idealized version of what they believe they should be. This creates a constant sense of falling short, which masks their actual achievements and obscures their talents. Their strengths, empathy, vision, depth of thought, creativity, are often so natural to them that they assume everyone else must operate the same way. What feels obvious or intuitive to an INFJ may, in fact, be extraordinary to others. But because they experience these traits as a baseline part of their experience, they often fail to recognize them as unique or valuable. Socially, INFJs are private and often reserved about their inner world. They may feel misunderstood or different, especially when their insights or emotional sensitivity aren't mirrored in those around them. This sense of not quite fitting in can reinforce feelings of self-doubt or invisibility, further distancing them from an accurate assessment of their strengths. Even when they are praised, INFJs can struggle to internalize it. Compliments may be dismissed as flattery or luck unless they align precisely with the INFJ's own inner standards of authenticity and purpose. Another contributing factor is the INFJ's tendency towards self-analysis and introspection, which, while a strength in itself, can become a trap. Instead of celebrating their competencies, INFJs might focus on their perceived shortcomings or unfulfilled potential. Their mind is always turning inward, asking, "How could I have done that better?" or "What am I still missing?" This constant reevaluation, while useful for growth, often comes at the expense of self-recognition. Also, their tertiary function, introverted thinking, can manifest in a self-critical way. It seeks internal logical consistency and often dissects the INFJ's own thoughts and actions with a sharp analytical lens. This can lead them to second-guess their instincts or dismiss their achievements as flawed, especially if they don't meet some internalized ideal of rational coherence or usefulness. The irony is that INFJs often bring a profound sense of purpose and insight to the world, yet struggle to fully see the impact of their own contributions. They may be admired for their wisdom, compassion, and vision, but until they learn to turn their intuition inward with the same compassion they offer others, these gifts can feel invisible to them. Their strengths operate so quietly, so seamlessly integrated into who they are, that they miss them completely, unless someone else reflects them back with clarity, persistence, and genuine understanding. The blindness INFJs often have to their strengths is rooted not just in cognitive function theory, but also in the emotional texture of their inner lives. Deeply attuned to the emotions of others, they often act as emotional barometers in their relationships and environments. This capacity to sense underlying emotional currents, to intuit the unsaid, and to respond with uncanny precision is a profound strength. But to the INFJ, it feels less like a skill and more like a burden or an obligation. Because this emotional awareness is so ever-present, They may interpret it not as a gift, but as a source of emotional fatigue or confusion, especially when they absorb negative emotions that don't belong to them. When a strength manifests as emotional overwhelm, it becomes harder to recognize as a strength at all. There's also a subtle but powerful humility that defines many INFJs. They often resist the spotlight, not out of shyness alone, but from a genuine discomfort with self-aggrandizement. Their values push them toward modesty and service, which can cause them to downplay or outright ignore their own talents. They often believe that their work should speak for itself, or that making a difference is more important than being seen doing so. This can lead to situations where their impact is significant but invisible, even to themselves. They may walk away from an interaction having transformed someone's perspective or deeply supported them emotionally, yet not fully realize the magnitude of what they've done. Part of this blindness also stems from how future-oriented INFJs are. Their introverted intuition constantly draws them toward what could be, toward unrealized visions, unmet ideals, and the deeper meaning behind events. This future focus can create a quiet sense of inadequacy. They are so attuned to what they want to become, to the better version of themselves they're always striving toward, that they rarely pause to see who they already are. The present moment often takes a back seat to the evolving vision. Strengths that are currently active, like their emotional intelligence, ability to think in systems, or gift for nuanced expression, can get lost in the pull toward what still feels incomplete. Another factor is the paradoxical experience of feeling both deeply misunderstood and intensely sensitive to others' perceptions. INFJs often experience life through a lens of inner contradiction. They want to be known, but they also fiercely protect their inner world. They long to make an impact, but struggle with visibility. They crave meaningful connection, but often feel isolated by the depth of their perception. This tension creates a kind of emotional fog that makes self-recognition difficult. When so much of their energy is spent decoding the world around them and keeping their own complexity hidden or safe, it's no wonder they lose sight of their own value. Many INFJs also carry a quiet but persistent self-doubt. This isn't the loud insecurity that demands reassurance. It's the quiet kind that hides in the corners of self-reflection, whispering that they haven't done enough, haven't lived up to their purpose, haven't quite found the right way to use their gifts. This self-doubt thrives in the absence of clear feedback. And because INFJs often operate behind the scenes or in subtle emotional realms, they rarely receive the kind of tangible affirmation that might help them see their worth more clearly. Even when they do receive praise, they may distrust it, feeling that others don't really know them well enough to see the truth. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. Get your copy now. INFJs often prioritize depth over breadth. They may not collect a long list of accomplishments in the traditional sense, but they move through the world leaving deep and lasting impressions. Because their form of influence is not flashy or immediate, it's easy for them to feel like they're not doing enough. They may compare themselves to more outwardly driven or visibly successful types and come away feeling small, despite having made significant emotional or philosophical contributions in their own quiet way. What complicates all of this is the INFJ's struggle with self-compassion. They are often much kinder to others than to themselves. They extend understanding, patience, and support to those in pain, yet hold themselves to an unforgiving standard. Their natural role as the counselor or healer archetype means they frequently play the part of emotional caretaker, but don't always allow themselves the same nurturing space. Without that self-compassion, their strengths become expectations rather than gifts, things they should do, not things they are uniquely capable of doing. One of the deeper reasons INFJs fail to recognize their strengths is because many of those strengths don't align with what the external world typically rewards. In a culture that often values visibility, speed, competition, and tangible results, INFJs bring a different kind of currency: emotional depth, long-term vision, and quiet transformation. They work slowly and intentionally, often behind the scenes, without needing or wanting credit. But when the world doesn't mirror back the value of what they're contributing, they begin to doubt its worth. They wonder if the hours spent listening to someone's pain, the words crafted to inspire someone's healing, or the intuition that helped a friend make a life-changing decision truly count as success. They do deeply. But INFJs often don't receive that validation in a form that registers with them, which reinforces the illusion that they aren't doing enough or being enough. INFJs also tend to carry old wounds that shape how they see themselves. Many grow up feeling misunderstood, out of place, or burdened by their sensitivity. They might be told they're too intense, too emotional, too idealistic, or too serious. These messages, especially when received in childhood, can become internalized, muting their self-perception and causing them to see their most powerful qualities as liabilities. The very traits that set them apart, their depth, their vision, their emotional insight, can feel like things they need to manage, tone down, or hide. Over time, they may become more comfortable emphasizing their humility and service, while burying their brilliance under layers of self-restraint. INFJs rarely get to see themselves in others. Their personality type is one of the rarest, and their way of processing the world, through abstract, intuitive leaps paired with intense emotional resonance, is not something they frequently encounter in their environment. This lack of mirroring can reinforce a sense of being strange or out of step, which further clouds their ability to appreciate their uniqueness. When no one quite thinks, feels, or dreams like you, it's easy to assume that your inner world isn't just different, but somehow wrong. This absence of external validation can distort their sense of what they're good at, making their strengths feel invisible or irrelevant. They are also masters of adaptation. Because they are so attuned to what others need or expect, they can shape-shift into the version of themselves that best supports or soothes the situation. While this is a powerful gift in empathy and relational intelligence, it can distance them from their core self. When you're constantly adjusting to meet others where they are, it becomes more difficult to stand still long enough to see who you really are, what you want, what you're good at, what you value independently of others. Over time, this habit of chameleon-like adjustment makes their authentic self blurry, even to themselves. Also, INFJs are blind to their strengths because their strongest qualities often feel effortless. Their ability to understand someone without words, to sense emotional undercurrents, to see the deeper implications of a moment or a decision. These abilities are not constructed through effort, they are embodied. And because these gifts come so naturally, they can seem unremarkable to the INFJ. There's a common psychological truth that people tend to devalue the things that come easiest to them, assuming, wrongly, that others must experience the world in the same way. INFJs don't realize that their way of moving through the world is rare because to them, it's simply normal. INFJs are blind to their strengths because their identity is shaped not by ego, but by meaning. They don't seek power for its own sake or recognition to validate their existence. Their motivation is more existential, anchored in questions like, what am I here to do? What does this mean? How can I make things better? This core drive to find purpose beyond themselves creates an orientation towards service and transcendence that often bypasses the ego altogether. And when the ego is quiet, it does not stand up and demand that strengths be acknowledged. It doesn't broadcast victories or tally up evidence of one's worth. It simply keeps moving forward, ever focused on the next insight, the next person to help, the next internal evolution. This meaning-centric identity means that INFJs often only feel strong when they are aligned with their deeper purpose. But that purpose is elusive, always slightly out of reach. It's not uncommon for INFJs to feel like they're waiting for some great calling, some moment where all their gifts will crystallize into a role that makes perfect sense. Until then, their abilities can feel fragmented or even invisible, important, perhaps, but not enough. They may have helped dozens of people, written beautifully, spoken with quiet power, or brought clarity to chaotic situations, and still feel like they've missed something essential. Their longing for alignment is so strong that anything less than complete resonance with their vision feels like a failure. This longing is complicated by the fact that INFJs tend to carry a kind of quiet existential grief. It's not always conscious, but it runs beneath the surface of their lives. They see what others often overlook: the brokenness of systems, the depth of human suffering, the ways people hurt each other out of fear and blindness. They also see what could be, the healing, the unity, the deep potential in individuals in the world. Living with that contrast every day, the reality versus the ideal, creates a kind of ache that INFJs often internalize. They may feel like it's their job to bridge the gap, to bring the vision closer to reality. But because the gap is so wide and progress feels so slow, they can begin to see themselves as inadequate agents of change. They mistake the size of the task for a reflection of their own limitations, rather than recognizing the strength it takes to hold that vision in the first place. It's also worth acknowledging how INFJs are often emotionally exhausted, not just from helping others, but from feeling so much, so deeply, so often. Emotional fatigue blurs self-perception. When you're carrying the emotional weight of your environment, your relationships, and the broader world, there is very little energy left over to examine yourself with clarity or care. You might sense that you're barely holding everything together, even when you're doing it with exceptional grace. You might feel like you're drowning, while others see you as the lifeboat. The process of becoming aware of their strengths isn't about ego inflation or seeking praise. For the INFJ, it's about coming home to themselves. It's about realizing that their very way of being thoughtful, visionary, gentle, intense, kind, quietly brave is the strength. It doesn't need to be proven, marketed, or even understood by the world to be real. It just needs to be owned. When INFJs begin to embrace their gifts, they don't become arrogant or loud. They become clearer, more anchored. They stop waiting for permission to trust their voice. They stop looking outside for validation. They begin to move through the world not just with quiet purpose, but with quiet certainty. And this shift, while invisible to most, changes everything. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. Get your copy now